I've been hearing a lot of these conversations of like, I seem to attract people who aren't good for me. I attract people who are assholes. I attract people who are narcissists. I attract people who are unkind. And I hear this actually a lot, and I think it's a very important conversation to have, which is, there's the victim mentality of it, which, hey, we often begin as a victim mentality and then we rise into power by taking responsibility for the choices we've made. So if we continue to attract people who are not good to us, we have chosen people who are not good to us too. So the large amount, your life won't shift till you take responsibility for that one piece that you've chosen these people. Now, that allows you access then to why did you choose them? That allows you access to it. But if you don't actually take responsibility for that, then you won't have access to the wisdom and the changing of the pattern, because part of the pattern is the denial of the fucking pattern, right? And so even if you date potential, you're not dating who someone currently is. If you see someone actively changing towards their best self, because of course we always can aspire to be our better selves, if someone is not actively changing towards that and they don't want your feedback and they don't want you to speak them into their potential, then you're pushing a big rock up a big hill, right? And that is often the wounding pattern of the person who dates assholes, who dates narcissists, who dates projects, who dates people for their potential, is their whole addiction is trying to change people, which is very much the avoidance of their own work. Okay, so because I saw a comment yesterday where someone was saying like, I attract to assholes and I don't want to do that, but I just think it's something I'm destined to have. First off, frickin' victim mentality right there. You're not empowered. You can't change it as soon as you take that. Because you know what? Everyone gets the same fucking dating pool on Bumble and on Tinder, but only some people end up in relationships with the assholes and the narcissists and the pricks and the people who are unkind. The women who are not nice and the men who are not nice. Everyone gets the same pool. You, if you identify with this, are not being channeled the shitty relationship partner pool. You're somehow ending up further down the line and in relationship with people, or even on dates with people that other people don't end up in relationship with or on dates with. So that tells us that there is something different that you're doing that they're not doing. Or there's something different that they're doing that you're not doing. And that is that they identify red flags and energy that is corrosive and toxic that you actually are drawn to. And so if you can actually just own that piece, if you relate to this in any way, then pay attention and get curious. Because I'm not saying it to hurt your feelings. I'm not saying it to spark something other than the desire to change your life. And change the relationships that you seek. And it's this relational experience. If we're seeking men or women like this, then we often had a parent like that. We often dealt with an addict as a parent. So you would see this as the other side of codependency. You could also see this as the other side of anxious attachment to someone who's avoidant. So, of course, anxious versus avoidant becomes very much different when the avoidant person is actually toxic and corrosive. And I say those words with empathy for people who are toxic because I know they come from something very painful in order to be that way. You don't become that way if you didn't go through great pain. Now, I've said this before, that there's a difference between having compassion for someone and tolerating their bullshit. There's a difference between having empathy for someone and tolerating their bullshit. And so a lot of people who identify as givers and people who are empaths, I'm an empath. I have healing energy. So I just attract people who need to be healed. No, yeah, but maybe you have healing energy and you feel a lot and you feel a lot of stuff. The truth is that you don't have boundaries around your giving and you attract people who take. So although you are attracting people who need to be healed, they don't actually desire the healing that you're giving, because in a way what happens when people are dating people that they want to change and change into a different potential, or actually like cure these assholes and narcissists and all these and fix them, those people are avoiding their own work and they're afraid to actually enter a relationship where someone will meet them. So that becomes this distraction of, I'm going to date people who aren't great for me, as a distraction from actually finding someone who might love you, because deeper in that is a belief that we're unworthy of being loved. And that really is the catch to it all, is that if you can start to see that the deeper belief and fear of being loved is actually what's getting in the way of you choosing someone who can love you, then now you're in a power position. You now have this opportunity to change. You have this opportunity to actually go, well, shit, that's not healthy. That doesn't work out. I don't really love that. It feels like shit. I want to stop feeling like shit. I'm going to change. And so that is, if you identify as a giver and empath, and just recognize that that often is us escaping being loved. You can be someone who feels really deeply. We don't want to shut that off, but we want to put boundaries around your feeling and the depth of your feeling and who gets access to your feeling. And no one's going to put those fucking boundaries in place for you. You have to do it for yourself. And if you're not doing it for yourself, you're just going to continue to attract people who will take from you. And that's why when you're swiping right and left, swipe right to people who seem inherently good. Don't swipe right to douchebags. Don't swipe right to shirtless mirror pictures. Don't swipe right to people who are chasing self-worth through material. Don't swipe right to things. And I say that in life. Like when you're swiping right, I'm saying, who are you talking to? Because it doesn't just have to be a dating app. Because people, even in the real world, we do the exact same thing we do on apps. Apps are just a magnifying glass to our superficiality. We've always been superficial. That's not new. Ghosting isn't new. People used to say, I'm going to ride my horse over to your house, and they never rode the horse over to the house. So that shit has always happened. So what happens when you're walking down the street is psychologically you are putting people into a potential mate position or a potential not. So you're pushing people into bushes and you're keeping people. So you just have to recognize that on an app you're doing it much more superficially, and you can do it in much more volume, so it has a magnifying glass to superficiality. But if you look at the research on judging someone's value system based on their Facebook and their Instagram, or you can actually put them into a very good value system judgment. You can figure out what their values are pretty quickly. And I mean no offense to anyone who does this, but if you see someone's Instagram and they have a picture of their Porsche steering wheel with a fucking sick watch, and it's just a picture looking down at the material they've collected, that's a pretty big red flag right away. I can tell you that right away because they're using material to attract people. And don't get me wrong, like people who have wealth can often be attractive, especially to females, because there is an inherent evolutionary desire for those things. But becoming conscious, which isn't a consciousness of like, I'm conscious, you're not bullshit. I'm not into that hierarchical thing. It's that becoming conscious and aware is actually recognizing what your biology wants to choose versus what is good for you. And that's very different. Just like a man can know, his biology, and I'm generalizing or genderizing, a man's biology makes him want to pursue, a woman who eludes fertility because that's biologically what we're attracted to, and youth is associated with fertility. But you can know that when you're with your partner who is 55 and you're 60 or 55, that leaving your partner for a younger woman is not a great decision because you're causing a lot of instability in your life, your partner's life, your family's life, and what you're getting is just a short-term gain. But again, that's biology versus rationale. And, I think this is just a very important concept to grasp, is that your biology will want you to pick men or women who appear as though they have high self-worth. Well, men and women who are unavailable appear to have high self-worth. And men and women who are arrogant appear to have high self-worth because biologically it appears as though they are in competition. Other people pursue them. They're acting like they don't have a lot of time. And evolutionarily, it tricks us to think they're high value. And it isn't only about choosing nice men. It is about choosing men who have boundaries and are kind. So nice men are doormats, and there's a great saying, and nice women are doormats. But you can't be a doormat if you don't lay down. And so what is happening is that when nice empaths, nice people, givers, there's always an unwritten contract, a covert contract. I'm going to give you this stuff if you love me. I'm going to heal you and take care of you and do everything for you if you stay with me, if you love me. If you don't do those things, you've broken the contract, the secret contract I created that I didn't tell you about. And so there's a great saying from the book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. If you identify as a nice girl or a nice guy and you get walked on and you're a doormat, read it. Because it's essentially going to tell you that nice people in that context are anything but nice. They're actually very manipulative. And so my ongoing running theory is that when people feel taken advantage of, and I'm not talking about everybody, but if you find yourself constantly feeling like a victim, constantly taken advantage of, constantly no one showing up for you, constantly this, constantly that, if that is any way resonating with you, what I see is that there's an innate power that is in that ability. It sounds weird, right? Because it's powerlessness. It's going, no one ever shows up for me. No one takes care of me. What's really happening is you're not doing it for yourself, but you're contracting that out to people outside of you who will never give it to you because you'll never get it from them. You'll only get it from yourself. And so, like people who identify as being taken advantage of and giving too much and attracting people who are not good for them are actually even more covertly manipulative because they're actually the puppet master below who's creating the covert contracts no one knows about. And there's power derived in saying everyone takes advantage of me. There's power derived in always going through the same relational patterns because then you can go talk to all the people around you about all the times that this happens to you. And it ends up being a reward system. Also, when you're in a relationship with someone and you constantly feel disappointed by them and they constantly feel like nothing they can ever do is enough, is because the person who's constantly disappointed is often addicted to the disappointment and the other person is used to not feeling like enough. That's why these always go together. These patterns always work together. It's not one person's wrong and the other's right. Both people have dysfunctions and patterns that don't work. All humans do. I'm not void of this. I am a person who keeps figuring out different layers of what's going on for me, and it's my responsibility to navigate that. But my relationship is also not void of conflict and challenges and hard conversations. But we can't be a victim and expect to change our lives. We can't be the person who's always taken advantage of and not change our lives. Like, you can't be powerless and expect to change your life. It just doesn't happen. But even this concept of like people will show interest in you and then they ghost on you. How do you protect yourself from people who ghost on you? Well, you move to getting to go to a coffee quickly. Also don't move off the app. That is, don't move off apps. Don't move off an app till you know you want to date someone. Don't give them your fucking phone number. That's a horrible idea. Stay on the app. That's the point of the app. It's like you're not going to give them your address the moment you meet them. And it really is about preserving and protecting yourself till you think that they are allowed. So if you have someone who elevates the relationship really quickly, wants to take you on trips on the second date and do shit like that, that's a huge red flag. That's a huge red flag. And how do you forgive yourself for these things? How do you forgive yourself for having made poor relationship choices? Well, welcome to Earth, right? We've all made poor relationship choices. Shit, I made a number of them. And I continue to sometimes make them, and I notice them after, and I change. So you forgive yourself by first off changing. So when you actually look at what you've been through, and what you've done that was not okay, and the things that you haven't taken responsibility for, is you actually take responsibility for all of it. And you feel it. And you change. You actually change. You go, what wisdom was I missing in that moment that got me to that place? What would I tell myself today? What would that part of me that I've been shaming, what would I tell myself today? What would be the advice I would give? And then you fucking listen to your own advice. If you don't listen to your advice, you'll repeat the patterns and you won't change. And that experience will feel painful because it will feel purposelessness. Purposelessness. Yeah, that's the right word. Okay, so how do you set boundaries if you've said what you expect? Leave it if it doesn't change? You say you didn't meet the boundary that I set. And when you did this is how it made me feel. And this is what I need from you moving forward if we're going to develop a relationship. And if not, then they're not your person. But you have to do the work of asking for what you want. See, a lot of the time what happens is people feel let down and then they end the relationship, but they never learn how to have the hard conversation. So what happens is people feel constantly taken advantage of, constantly let down, and then they end the relationships right away. They just run. But what they've never changed is their relationship to the other person. They've never changed how to actually ask for what they need and set expectations and standards. So they just keep moving from relationship to relationship, never getting past the place where they feel worthy of actually getting their need met because they don't tell the person how their need wasn't met. So they just keep repeating the same patterns and resetting the relationships, but never actually learning how to be let down. And what I mean by that is, you can ask someone for what you want and what you need, and they can say they don't want to give it to you. But that has nothing to do with whether you're worthy of it. That has to do with whether they're ready to show up for it. If they're not ready to show up for it, you showed your own worthiness by asking for it, because when you asked for what you needed, you sent the message to yourself that you're worthy of getting that fucking need met. If you don't ask for your need to get met and share your expectation, then you're actually sending the message that you're not worthy of being heard and you're not worthy of having your expectations and needs met. So that's how it rolls out. Man, I could rant all day, but I wanted to send you guys so much love.